What we need from you is a complete investigation of why the FBI did not take this up, and then getting to the bottom of what is appearing to be an enormous sex trafficking ring and listening to these survivors. And as I said, I've tried to get a subpoena on the flight logs, which I think is important to this. I think people need to know who was on those planes and how often they were on those planes. I think people who invest in companies would want to know if there are people from their C-suite. And as we go through this, should those logs be made public? They've been heavily redacted.
Well, as I said, it's been a while since I looked at the specific case.
That's impressive. It is impressive to have a United States Senator care enough about these victims and care enough about the truth to bring up something that is, well, I don't know, uncomfortable, dangerous. We're dealing with millionaires and billionaires and leaders of the world. Joining me now, that senator from the great state of Tennessee, Senator Marsha Blackburn. Senator, it's pretty obvious to everybody paying attention, and I'm so glad you're bringing this up, that the FBI, Dick Durbin, they're very, very, almost bizarrely uncurious about those flight logs and about Jeffrey Epstein and international sex trafficking of young women.
Yes, indeed. And we didn't learn a lot during the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. And the flight logs that were submitted were heavily redacted. And there are women who were, at that point, young girls who were groomed by Ghislaine Maxwell and then taken to this island. And this is where the rendezvous took place. And what we have learned is it appears that Jeffrey Epstein had this enormous sex trafficking ring that was put in place. What we've heard from some of the survivors is that he had a lot of child sexual abuse material, and that's called CSAM. And we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to know who all was involved in this human trafficking, sex trafficking operation that Jeffrey Epstein was running. And, Jesse, we're at a point where we have the mayors of blue cities saying, you wouldn't believe the number of prostitution rings that are in our cities now, and they're linked to the cartels, and women that are coming across the border they're telling us stories about being sexually abused, being put into these trafficking rings. And we know the cartels have moved the human trafficking, sex trafficking business from being a few tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars a year into $150 billion a year business. And this is a crime that is being carried out against women and girls.
Senator, I'm glad you were on this as we just discussed. And look, the cartels being subhuman pieces of filth is not news, but the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, not caring about this, or dare I say, covering it up. Those are my words, not yours. When the Federal Bureau of Investigation is busy hiding as much as possible, it has me and many Americans curious and frankly a little bit afraid. I'm more worried about a corrupt FBI than I am a cartel, because the cartel doesn't really have power over my life.
Well, and you're right about that. And those are separate issues. And when you look at the Epstein case, the lack of curiosity about this sex trafficking ring and the concern that people have about two tiers of justice, and how people that are the elites, and these were basically high dollar predators, if you will, and that were working with Jeffrey Epstein and his sex trafficking ring. This is why getting those flight logs, getting them in an unredacted form, so that we can know who was a participant with him, with Ghislaine Maxwell, in this trafficking ring.
Senator, let's switch gears here a little bit anyway.
Sure.
Speaking of the weaponization of government, you had this to ask about Christopher Wray and Jack Smith yesterday.
If I liked a tweet from President Trump, if anybody on this side of the dais retweeted a tweet from President Trump, according to this, Jack Smith could go pull everything affiliated with our Twitter account. If anything that came from that real Donald Trump showed up in our feed, do you think that this is an infringement of my free speech?
Well, let me say this. I certainly understand the concern, but what I would tell you
hope
is,
so.
but what I would tell you is that this investigation being led by the special counsel. It's not appropriate for me to comment on that ongoing investigation. It's also under the supervision of a court, which includes
Ongoing
the search warrant.
investigation
Yes.
is code word for we are stonewalling, and we hear this from you all repeatedly, and it's really quite frustrating.
No, ma'am, and
That is all we hear, Senator, as you just pointed out there, and I'm glad you brought it up. Sorry, can't comment on an ongoing investigation, can't comment. So if that's all we're ever going to get, what's the next step to bring this organization to heel, an organization that should exist underneath the Senate, not above it?
Jesse, we're going to get change when we elect a new president in November 24 and when we have control of the U.S. Senate. The FBI, as it is currently shaped in this administration, they say ongoing investigation to everything we want to do. Everything is under investigation. And they use that to not give us details. And the clip that you played shows a search warrant. I had the search warrant. I showed the redacted pages. I read from the search warrant. This was a search warrant of Donald Trump's Twitter account, and it went from October 2020 to January 21. Now, they wanted every information, every name, address, phone number, email address, everything on the individuals that had access to Donald Trump's account. Then, a page later in the search warrant, they wanted that same information from anyone who favorited, liked, retweeted, or posted something from Donald Trump in their feed. So this just shows you how invasive that is of our privacy. So as I ask him, for those of us on the Republican side of the dais, if we had put up something from Donald Trump, it could be as simple as go vote. Then they would have pulled that, and then they would have put us in that database. And what an invasion of our privacy. What an invasion of our free speech, that we would repost something and then that would land us in the middle of an investigation. And here's the other thing to think about. You know, he wants to say, well, it's ongoing and it's being handled by a special counsel and it's yet to go to court. But the investigators for that special counsel are from the FBI.
How about that? Senator, keep going. I applaud you. It takes some guts to do what you're doing. Senator Marsha Blackburn, thank you so much.